Well, thank you for that very enthusiastic opening remarks and introduction. I think you dropped your pen. I want to build on his enthusiasm. It is great to be back in Louisiana. It is fantastic to be before you to talk about the energy challenges of today. And I know you're going to have a great conference. I wish I could hang around for the next couple of days to participate, but I will participate as I can. And I just share the President's enthusiasm for the opportunities that are here and the inflection point that we are at a nation and globally to help address our energy needs and to also address emission reductions that we know are critical as we move forward through the energy transition. Now, before I get into my remarks, I want to tell you a little bit about the United States Energy Association, because President Fitt's remarks about the global approach is indeed what USEA has been done. I'll talk then about the energy trends that we see, and then I'll finish with just putting a fine point on the role of Louisiana being a native. It's important, I think, to articulate that not only to you but also to to our global audience of the importance that Louisiana plays not only in its energy production, but that it's leading in the technological advances really of the energy future. So first, let me just say a little bit about the United States Energy Association. We are actually celebrating our 100th year. We were formed as part of the World Energy Council 100 years ago, and the goal then, as it is today, is to provide access to affordable and reliable energy across the globe and here in the United States. We function as a government contractor with the U.S. Agency for International Development, for the State Department, the Department of Energy, as well as other agencies, including the World Bank. And it's in that role that we help the United States government carry out its mission in primarily with the USAID, the developing world, to meet their growing energy needs. We know that over the next century, we're going to have an additional 2 billion people on Earth. They're going to come primarily from the developing countries in Southeast Asia, in India, in parts of Africa, and these developing countries are going to need energy. Their population will increase. The goal will be to help provide them access to affordable and reliable energy while also not repeating the past efforts of other countries have made, but go directly to assuring that that energy supply does not increase their emission production. So that is the goal. Also, we work to help the State Department carry out its strategic mission in different parts of the world. For example, we're in Eastern Europe, where USEA, among others, played a key role in developing the Ukrainian electricity system to disconnect from Russia's electricity system right before the invasion. USEA, among others, notified Russia was disconnecting before the invasion. The Ukrainian electricity system became independent, and over the next three weeks, in record time, the EU allowed the Ukrainian system to be interconnected with the EU system. It took the work of many, but USEA was there, and that really culminated in a decadal effort to free up Eastern Europe from Russia. So those are examples of what the United States Energy Association does, and we are very grateful for our long-term relationship with Tulane University, and thank you, President Fitts, for that. Now, of course, we're all interested in helping to solve and address the world's energy challenges. And these questions, we have the opportunity really to answer them today. President Fitts talked about the increase in energy needs. I talked about the growing populations of the world. But here now with the growth of AI, to think AI now will be so much part of our economy and our daily lives, but it's increasing the use of energy. And as a consequence, how are we going to find the generation, to really power these data centers driven by AI? These are real questions. And we need to really think about, how we are going to resolve these issues. Again, the key here is not which types of fuels in the power sector that we choose to use. It's we need all of the above. We will need every possible source of energy that we can get. And while we're at it, we should focus on, of course, those fuels that reduce emissions, because that is the global goal here to address the effects of climate change. It's emissions that cause climate change. It's not which fuel you use. Now, people ask me, well, what can we expect now that we have new leadership in Washington? What can we expect? And I tell people, you know, I think it's worth going back to where we were pre-COVID. If you look at where the United States was in 2020 before COVID, you know, you saw a United States that had record low unemployment levels. We were leading the world in oil and natural gas production, leading the world. We had changed geopolitics potentially forever, being both a competitor with the OPEC countries and Russia. And so with our production, we were able to offset and balance the actions of OPEC that for decades we had become dependent on them. They essentially determined production levels and price levels. We had no choice. All that changed in 2020, pre-COVID, and it continues today. We now export. So that export product of oil helps moderate global prices, and it ensures that our friends and allies have a safe and secure source of energy that they can rely on. So both oil and natural gas. It's important to continue that. In solar development, it's according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, so you can actually check this out because it's going to be hard for you to believe what I tell you. But Energy Finance then projected over 19 gigawatts of new solar capacity for 2020, positioning solar in the power sector as the fastest growth. That same publication did an analysis and determined that more wind power came online during President Trump's first term than during either the second term of President Obama or throughout President Biden's term. Emissions were continuing a steady decline. The U.S. led the world by orders of magnitude in actual emission reductions since 2005. It's roughly about a 12% reduction, and that occurred as the economy expanded. We would expect that we can continue to achieve these consequences as we move forward. Certainly, again, under President Biden as well, we had, coming out of COVID, you saw what happened to the economy. You saw there was some increase in emissions. But if you look at the U.S. continues to drive, particularly in the power sector, where we see renewables and natural gas really replacing coal. And that is the primary reason why the U.S. has been able to drive down its cost, its emission productions. So let's look at today. So what should we focus on? Well, we should focus on innovation, over regulation. And I think you're going to hear that today. What exciting new breakthrough technologies are out there? How can we deploy them? How can we drive down those costs? And how can we implement them in a way to meet our increased energy demands? But it's not going to be through mandates. It's likely to be done through creating an atmosphere where investments can go and decisions can be made, and you can deploy both capital and get the infrastructure built. Now, You've all heard about, the biggest problem we have in the United States is permitting. And I'm not going to get into that other than to say, to be sure, in the world of policy, the fact of the matter is you can have great breakthroughs in science and technology. You can have great idea. You can even have the flow of capital moving. But unless and until we figure out how it is to be able to build any energy infrastructure, well, whether it's solar or wind or it's pipelines, carrying natural gas or crude to our refineries, that's going to be an area still that you can look for that is going to need some improvement. Now, we should also continue to invest in the carbon capture technologies. I think you can look forward to seeing more carbon capture and utilization technologies. We've talked about other types of fuels. Hydrogen is a good example. Louisiana's a leader in hydrogen production. Biofuels in the transportation sector, fuel cells in the transportation sector, trying to drive down the emissions in the transportation sector. And let's not forget about nuclear. I want to talk a little bit about nuclear because it's been in the news an awful lot, and it's been in the news for several reasons. One, the United States finally has a new nuclear up and running, the Vogtle plant, Unit 4. Former Secretary Bruyette and I and other former secretaries and deputy secretaries at the Department of Energy all went to the ribbon cutting a few months ago because that was an effort from the Department of Energy and other regulatory bodies over the years, and it was really quite a moment to see that we had new nuclear plant coming up. That's going to be decades of emission-free energy. While extremely expensive, making investments today in nuclear will survive today and will continue for decades to bring emission-free power. The recent news of 3 Mile Island's potential reopening, driven by Microsoft, its growing AI and data center demands, that to me is a good thing. And whether you're pro-nuclear or not, you should think about why the U.S. should maintain its leadership in nuclear technology. It's because there are other countries that have demonstrated that they can build nuclear plants, Russia and China. Forget about Chernobyl, that design is no longer being used. But Russia and China are very capable about building nuclear facilities. Now, the difference between the U.S., China, and Russia, and even the Japan and the Koreans and the French, all are capable of building and designing and building, is that the United States requires that for U.S. technology to be used in building nuclear plants, a country have to have what's called a 123 agreement. That's a section in the Atomic Energy Act that requires for any country to use U.S.-derived technology, you need to agree on non-proliferation and non-weaponization. And there is a treaty, but the treaty enforcement provisions probably are not as significant as having a 123 agreement. Well, neither China nor Russia require 123 agreements. Reflect for a moment. If China and Russia are building nuclear facilities around the world without the need for a true commitment on non-proliferation and weaponization. That's why the United States needs to keep the leadership on the technology to be the technology of choice for future nuclear. I like to point that out. Now, since we're on nuclear, I have to talk to you about the big change in fusion, right? I mean, decades ago, fusion was talked about as a potential fuel source, and we're always 30 years away from fusion. Well, with the development of AI, it's now potentially capable of cutting significant time off on the design and development of fusion reactors, advanced reactors. You tie that to the flow of capital now, you now have billions of dollars flowing into fusion companies. I'm very optimistic about the future of fusion. And I was recently appointed to serve on the commission of the scaling of fusion energy. And this is a commission that aims to utilize the public and private sector to maximize the development and potential deployment of fusion energy. And I was just exchanging communications just the other day with the CEO of one of these fusion companies. He predicted with AI and with the flow of capital that his company could have fusion online in 8 years. In 8 years. Now, why is that? The private flow of capital, much more nimble than government funding. You can go and into these projects, think along the lines of Elon Musk funding, SpaceX. You can test to fail, gather data, digitize the data, use AI to make improvements, and build and test, build and test. Again, you're not dependent on government monies, it's private capital. Think of the time period that we can cut on developing that technology and just reflect, for a moment, that fuel source and what it would do to our power sector, not only here in the United States, but around the world. Now, we have global geopolitical issues. It's important that we maintain our production of all sources of energy. Our friends and allies around the world now realize more than any the valued partner U.S. can be. We've seen that with the Ukrainian invasion. We've seen that with the Middle East tensions. It's important that I think we put in place policies that continue that development. We talked a little bit about the need for permitting. Don't lose sight on the fact that even here in the United States, while permitting typically is thought about maybe with generation, but also don't forget the pipelines, the transmission, the midstream. We need to be able to have a healthy environment where if you need to increase capacity or build just to get fuel around, we need to focus on that again. And imagine this world, use AI to improve permitting process. The Department of Energy recently issued several, I think $20 million last month to deploy AI to assess whether or not you can improve the permitting process. That potentially could be very exciting. And finally, I just want to follow up on President Fitt's comments about the important role of Louisiana. And I do like to remind folks, when I do come to Louisiana, it's an important role. But it's an important role in ways that they're changing, and I just want to go through just some of these. So I agree with President Fitz, play a critical role. Tulane is perfectly situated to continue to drive the leadership on these issues. But Louisiana ranks 3rd in natural gas production, 7th in natural gas reserves. This is approximately 10% of total natural gas production and 6% of the U.S. reserves. It also plays a pivotal role in the global market. 61% of LNG exports come out of Louisiana. You have 15 refineries in Louisiana, processes nearly 3 million barrels of crude oil per day. Now, what I like for context, so what's 3 million barrels per day mean, right? So global demand is, give or take, 100 million barrels per day, 105 million barrels per day. Louisiana can produce 3 million barrels per day. So that is more than many OPEC countries. So it's an important role to play, and it's important to also know that some of that can be exported. Of course, you have a lot of energy. Louisiana has a lot of intensive industries, petrochemicals, petroleum, natural gas. So you rank very high in energy consumption. Also rely on natural gas for air conditioning and heating, with almost 70% of the households really using electricity to heat their homes and to cool their homes. Now, there is some lignite in Louisiana. But perhaps more importantly, Louisiana plays a crucial role in coal transportation. New Orleans is the third largest coal exporting port, shipped approximately 12% of all U.S. coal exports in 2023. In 2023, renewable energy sources contributed 4% of total electricity generation, but it may be small, but it's definitely growing, and it's a significant step forward. We shouldn't forget about biomass. We have abundant resources in Louisiana. It makes up nearly 3/5 of renewable electricity generation. These resources also feed 2 wood pellet manufacturing plants producing about 1.3 million tons annually, and most of these pellets are exported for use in power generation overseas. Hydroelectricity accounts for 27% of renewable electricity. The Sidney A. Murray Jr. Hydroelectric Station is a marvel of engineering, is the world's largest prefabricated power plant harnessing the power of the Mississippi. Solar power, both utility scale and small scale, contributed to about 17% of Louisiana's renewable generation in 2023. This is done thanks primarily to 2 solar farms that have been brought on. And while onshore wind potential is limited, Louisiana holds significant promise for offshore wind power. The recent award of a development lease in the Gulf of Mexico could potentially add 1.2 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity to its energy mix. Now, Louisiana is uniquely positioned to lead in CO2 storage. And EPA recognized that by giving the state primacy for Class 6 wells, which will help Louisiana really be a leader in CO2 sequestration. In 2023, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $1.2 billion investment to build 2 large-scale direct capture facilities in Texas and Louisiana. Project Cypress, a collaboration between Battelle, Climeworks, and Heirloom Carbon Technologies, will capture 1 million metric tons of CO2 annually from the atmosphere in Calcasieu Parish, and that captured CO2 will be permanently stored underground using the Gulf Coast Sequestration Project. And this project is expected to create around 2,300 jobs. So this is all very positive for Louisiana. Louisiana is a key partner with some of our national labs, with the Department of Energy, and will be a future source, I think, for additional opportunities to grow these new technologies. And we should also just recognize, too, the role for Louisiana in hydrogen. Louisiana leads the country really in hydrogen pipelines. They lead in clean hydrogen production. They have plans to build green hydrogen facilities. The future is bright in Louisiana for hydrogen. It's incredibly versatile. We have proven, we being the Department of Energy, has proven that really with retrofit drop-in technologies, you can convert natural gas turbines used in electrical generating units today to be able to burn increasing blends of hydrogen. And so, finally, let me just conclude by saying, that the energy landscape is really undergoing a rapid transformation, and it's driven by increased demand and global geopolitical tensions and the need to reduce emissions. As we navigate this complex and dynamic energy landscape, it's clear that, as President Fitz said, collaboration is going to be important. Integration of all energy sources will be important. Everyone will have a role to play. Every technology can be utilized. Innovation over regulation and the long-term perspective is essential. But by working together, we can build a more sustainable, secure, and prosperous energy future for generations to come. So let's embrace today's opportunities that lie ahead as well, and seize the moment to shape a better energy future for our nation and the world. Thank you very much.